Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rising live session. And I think they've saved the best for last. So today we're focusing on talent, which includes performance and goal management, succession and career development, calibration, and a little bit of platform. My name is Claire Badger, and I'm the Practice Director of Talent in the APAC region. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Michael Poulter.
Thanks, Claire. For those of you joining us today whom I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I am Michael Poulter and I'm a Principal Consultant in the talent team here at Rizing.
Awesome, and thanks for joining me today, Michael. So as we go through today's session, please feel free to put comments in the comments box below, and we'll answer those as we go through. So we're going to start today by talking about goal management. And I guess the first important thing to bring to attention is that the status report and meeting agenda features are being sunset from this release. Now, for most customers, I mean, for many of my customers, I know that they've definitely already moved away from this feature, but it is important to know that from this release moving forward, it will no longer be available. And the reason for that is that customers are now heavily encouraged to use the CPM functionality, or continuous performance management, because it offers the same features through activity tracking and also the meeting features, and it also offers a lot more. So with that being removed, you are encouraged to look towards that continuous performance management. The other big feature that came out in the last release was the new goals UI. So moving towards a far more streamlined look and feel. However, the features weren't yet at parity with the legacy version of goals that we're all used to, we all know and love. So with this release, they have focused on bringing feature parity to that new goals UI. So a good example of that is that they've brought the goal cascading feature in, which again, heavily used by everybody. And so within the new goals UI, you're able to see clear alignment and relationship between goals that are cascaded to you or that you've cascaded to yourself. There's also further optimization in the experience around identifying goals and also users. So for early adopters of the new goals UI, there was a lot of feedback that it could be quite difficult to navigate. People couldn't find the features and things that they were quite used to. So that has been improved in this release. And another is around goal editing. The final thing I'll just mention around bringing it to feature parity is the automatic population feature and use of metric lookup tables, which again, heavily used by goal management users. And that is now available in the new goals UI. I personally don't have any customers yet on the new UI. We're definitely playing around with it in our test systems and our demo systems, but don't actually have anyone actively using it yet. Michael, what about you? What are you seeing?
Look, I agree. I think none of the customers that I've worked with have adopted this new goal UI either, but it is encouraging and I guess really great to see that we're bringing in some of those features that a lot of customers, as you said, use quite heavily in the legacy goal UI. So cascading goals, the goal table and metric lookup tables you were speaking about. So the fact that they're now in this new goal UI is really encouraging. And I think we will probably see a few adoptees of this new UI over the next 6 months to 12 months.
Yeah, I reckon so too. I mean, it's one of those things. It will take a fair bit of change management because it does look and feel quite different. And as we know, goal and performance management is one of the most used modules globally. So there are a lot of people using it and comfortable using it. So there will be a fair bit of change management. And I think the other reason we potentially haven't seen a lot of adoptees yet is that it's probably a timely activity to do at the start of your performance process, when people are going into a new year and setting new goals. So again, I think it's about timing that change and when you want to put it in place and have, the best ability to manage the training and change that's going to be required. All right, so moving on. CPM, so continuous performance management. So similar to goals, there was a new user interface that was introduced in the last release. And this one is a bit different to goals. So I have seen people adopting this. So we do have a couple of customers that have moved over to the new CPM, and great feedback on it. And any new implementations moving forward, we are implementing continuous performance management in the new version. So it's very stable. We haven't had any reports of, any bugs or glitches that you commonly see with new features. So I think if you haven't already, I do think the new version of CPM is something that you should certainly look at adopting. And in this release, they brought out a couple of new features, which are quite good. The first one that excites me is the feedback integration with Outlook. So again, only used with the new CPM. It's not available with the previous version. And it actually came from a customer community idea. So always good to note when SAP are listening to what customers are saying. So basically, there is a new little Outlook add-on, which you can have applied to your Outlook. So that it shows within your sort of Outlook browser. You'll have like a little give feedback icon, and you can click that, and it gives them the ability to then give feedback directly from Outlook. So, maybe you're working on a project, or you've been working closely with someone, and you've received some feedback on email, and you want to make sure that goes into SuccessFactors. You can very quickly and easily just select that little icon and give that feedback on the spot. So I think that's an awesome feature.
If I might add, Claire, I think it also helps with some of like the external, relationships that you have outside of your organization. So perhaps, for example, in our situation where we work quite closely and frequently with customers who aren't necessarily within our own SuccessFactors system, this is a really great way of incorporating that external feedback into your activities or achievements through CPM.
Yeah, no, good point. And the next one, still talking about feedback, and Michael, I know you've probably got a customer that will be quite excited by this. And again, a customer community idea. In CPM, you can now permission an administrator to be able to delete CPM feedback. So, it's rare, but sometimes you might see inappropriate feedback that's come through, or maybe it's just been incorrectly given. Previously, once the feedback was there, it was there. So now we can enable administrators to delete certain pieces of feedback. Now, the administrator can't see the content of the feedback. They can only see the topic, the date the feedback was given, and also who gave it and to whom. So, let's say a manager sees something that's been inappropriately put against an employee, they can then reach out to their administrator to delete that feedback. I think, Michael, you had a customer that was quite keen on that, or had asked that through implementation, hadn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the message that we, had to deliver was really around, if you're silly enough to provide feedback that is inappropriate, you reap what you sow, so to speak. But now with that, I guess that control, it helps both parties. Someone doesn't have to see perhaps something that they shouldn't, and or there is a bit of a safety net for those that may have said something that they didn't necessarily mean. So this is good, and this is really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing this.
Yeah, no, I agree. And probably the final one I wanted to call attention to in the continuous performance space is, again, another customer community idea. So you can see that's a continuing theme here, is that they've taken a lot of what customers are saying. And that's the ability to add attachments to your CPM activities. So it's just another way to, capture your evidence or demonstrate competence in whatever that activity is that you're working on. So you can have a little attachment field. You might attach, maybe there's a certain status report that you've got for that, or maybe there's a certain plan that you've detailed around that particular activity. And customers ask for this a lot. And in the same vein, they ask for attachments on goals. And so I think this is a great way to meet that requirement, giving employees the ability to put the attachments against the CPM activities. And just another probably final note, so the coaching feature, that for those that use CPM, the little coaching feature that was at the bottom where you could give a bit of a, I call it a compliment sandwich. So you could say, something you thought someone was doing well as some things that maybe they could do a little better. So that coaching feature is being sunset from the next release, so in November. That will be the end of development for that particular feature. It's not available in the new CPM, and so you won't see it in the old one either. I think that's all I sort of called out for CPM. Michael, did I miss anything?
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's exciting to see some of these changes, and as I said before, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right, I might move on to the performance and 360 part of the release. So the 360 had a major uplift, facelift over the last 12 months. So they finally moved away from that ugly looking 360 form and reports, and we're finally on a Fury version of 360, which is very exciting.
Very.
So exciting. But with this release, they're just bringing more, again, feature parity to the previous 360. So there was a few things that you still couldn't do within the Fury version. So I guess I just want to call some of those things out. So for example, form history. So when you're in the new version of 360, you can now go and see the form history of other 360s and also performance forms as well, just so that when you are doing a review, providing you've got permission to that person's forms, you're able to then bring up their performance form, say, and have a look at what feedback they've got through that as well. So you can do a holistic review. We've got print preview now available. We can also add approvers in the workflow. So if you need to add like an additional custom approver in the workflow, we can do that. We've got Stack Ranker now available, which is for rating competencies side by side with other people. Easy Rater, which is the quick rating feature. And also the ability to add a development goal section into the new 360. So look, things that you would have been used to in the old version of 360, but just highlighting that they are now available in the new 360, the sexy version, which is exciting. From a performance perspective, and correct me if you think differently, Michael, there wasn't a lot happening in the performance space this release. And that's generally just probably due to the stability of performance and the fact that we've all sort of know how it works. We like how it works. There's almost not a lot to do necessarily. They've had focus elsewhere. A lot of it was more around, having the ability to expose more APIs in performance. There were different ways that you could import ratings and calculated ratings, but there wasn't really anything standout that I sort of thought, we should talk through that.
No, not at all. I think where they've focused their attention to is kind of the elements that integrate into performance. So, for example, calibration obviously is a huge part that sits within performance, and that's probably a good segue into our next section, is talking about calibration. So, the next thing we want to talk about is within the calibration module, and of course, like to Claire's point earlier, this is also a feature that's being implemented from the customer community forum. A lot of customers speak to us about, how can we add additional filters, or how can we change filters that they might use to, I guess, identify groups of employees within the calibration session itself. Fortunately, in this release, that is now a function that can be done within Admin Center. So traditionally, this was something that consultants would do through XML changes, etc. But now that this is in the Admin Center UI, this empowers the customer to be able to make the changes how they see fit. And frankly, any time that happens, especially from a filtering point of view, I see this as a huge win. And I'm looking forward to going back to some customers and saying, hey, remember how, all of that had to be done through us or XML changes? Well, now you can do it too. So this for me is going to be a relatively big and a great impact for customers going forward. Have you had any customers talk about calibration filters through implementation, Claire?
Yeah, I mean, customers are always wanting filters, right? And particularly in calibration, as customers do their sort of roll up calibrations and they get more and more sort of people within the subjects of who they're calibrating, the filters become very important to them. So, it is a good feature to be able to allow them to control it themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. Another change as well is, again, coming from a customer community idea, is typically with distribution ranges for calibration sessions, you had to set a defined percentage for each of your rating scores. And what I mean by that is, so for example, on a 5-point rating scale, you might define that 20% of the calibration population has to sit within each of those ratings. Now, what you can do is you can define that you perhaps say only want 5% to be sitting in a rating of 1, 5% sitting in a rating of 5, and then the remaining 90%, you don't care whether they sit in 2, 3, or 4. It's just a broad kind of stretch across those remaining ratings, which is great because it helps provide flexibility from a distribution point of view. You don't have to necessarily push or force people into ratings that they might not necessarily deserve just to achieve a particular distribution curve. Of course, that can be enforced or not, depending on your preferences, but this way it just provides a little bit more flexibility and I guess cohesion with existing business processes. And the other part of that as well is the dashboards that you will all be so familiar with in calibration, the blue bar charts. If you meet those distribution guidelines, they'll now sit in the color blue. If you don't meet that distribution guideline, then the bar chart will be in orange. So just little things here and there, I guess, to help the customers through this process, draws your attention quickly to anything that might need mitigation or your attention to play around with. So anytime that there's more color in a program is for me something that's always very exciting.
The only thing is they still go sideways. I still can't get my head around that. I always just find myself being like, if they just
I don't know how many times I've had people ask me about that. Oh, can
I flip them
vertical? It's like, no, sorry. So I'm not sure. Maybe if we all flood the community forum with make them column graphs, then maybe that will change soon. And then from really, that's about it. That's all we really had to talk about from a calibration point of view. They were the biggest changes and probably the ones that we see having the most impact on customers. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Claire? Is there anything else you want to highlight there?
No, but probably just important to note with the calibration, obviously it's not just specific to performance, that those changes would apply to whatever calibration you're doing. So whether it be a succession talent calibration, whether it's a compensation calibration, those changes are relevant to all of those areas. Yeah,
correct. And you mentioned succession there. So again, another good segue into our next topic is the succession planning module of SuccessFactors. So I guess for me, the things I want to highlight in this is perhaps not something that I get asked a lot about in implementation, but I can see that it's on the customer's tip of their tongue when looking at it, is nomination history is now more readily available and accessible, let's call it, to anyone using the system. And what I mean by that is when you're using your succession org chart and going through perhaps successors on a particular position, when you click on that successor, you will automatically be shown a history of what that person's succession planning looks like. And that can include, for the position you're looking at, was this person ranked ready now? Were they previously ranked, ready in 2 to 3 years' time? Were they historically succession plan for any other positions. All that information is going to be there and ready for you, right there in front, good to go kind of thing. And in addition to that, it also now shows a history, and I guess all on the one page, any notes that have been captured by succession planners through that process.
How good's that? Everyone was always like,
yeah.
a note, you're like, where did that go?
Exactly. And that is something that does get raised a fair bit is, hey, I put this note in there. How do I look at it? How do I report on it? And instead of having to go through that, relatively arduous reporting process, you can now find it all on the same screen. So for me, this is going to open it up from a usability point of view quite a lot. And I think we're going to see a lot of customers really happy with this change.
I think that it's great, right? Because the feedback you often get with succession is that there are too many clicks. Like the information's there, but you kind of got to navigate through a little bit of a labyrinth to find, the history of a person's nominations and things like that. The notes, God knows where they went. But now, like having that all readily available when you're actually doing the planning to make sure you're making informed decisions and putting the most appropriate people into the succession plans. I mean, I think that's great.
Absolutely. And I think the last thing probably to call out around succession planning is that, and look, I don't have anyone using this functionality, but it is important to call out that any form-based nomination succession planning processes, that is going to be sunset in the next release. So I don't know anyone that does it because typically most people use MDF position nomination method. I know one customer that uses role sync method, but they don't use a form-based nomination for that. So I don't think this is going to impact anyone, and if it does, very few people. But this is I think a right step, a step in the right direction to go towards that more MDF friendly.
Yeah, I think it's been a long time coming. Long time coming.
Yeah.
So as we move on to CDP, Michael, one of the things, and I know you're going to talk about it, is around the integration with Qualtrics. And having, gone through the notes for all the different modules, there's definitely a theme around Qualtrics and really extending that HXM offering around employee experience. And so, for those of you that tuned into onboarding, debriefs and so on, there's a lot of surveys now available that you can, survey people as they're coming into the organization and at varying points within their new hire journey. And so, consistent theme throughout the release and career development's no different. So Michael, why don't you talk about the Qualtrics piece there?
Yeah, that's right. So obviously within the career development module, there is a sub-module called mentoring, which quite a few customers do use and have found to be quite, I guess, useful, especially bringing on graduates into their program, etc. But what was noticeably lacking in the past was an ability to, and especially in these COVID times when we work remotely, was to, I guess, find and get feedback from employees and employers on how the program went, what they thought the relationship matching, how well that worked, etc. So now with this Qualtrics integration, what is provided is an ability for the program organizers to get instant feedback from both the mentor and the mentee at any point. Well, not really at any point, sorry, but more when the relationship ends. So they can get a very clear understanding, how is this being received? Do people find it worthwhile? And then use that information to hopefully better their mentoring programs going forward. So for me, again,
pick the strong ones. Pick the strong mentors moving forward, right? So
yeah, correct. That's right. So well, I didn't think of it like that actually, but yeah, you're right. It's a good way of ensuring that the right people are mentoring the people going forward. So it's exciting that.
It's worded strangely in the release notes. Hey, Qualtrics surveys for end of mentoring relationships. It's like you're surveying someone at the end of a relationship. A little bit odd, but
yeah, it's a little grim, but rest assured, it's not as bad as it sounds. And staying on the mentoring theme, look, a little thing that I've heard a few customers raise, not necessarily a big change, but something I feel a lot of people will be happy with, is when you sign up to do a mentoring program, be it a mentor or a mentee, from that point in time, you had to complete the sign-up process. And if you exited out of it, you lost all the work that you'd done. But now, SuccessFactors have brought in an ability to save your sign-up and complete it at another time, so that if you need to gather more information about, what it is that you want to get out of this relationship, or, for example, you get called into an emergency meeting, you now don't have to lose all your work or make a tough choice about, do I finish my mentoring program sign up, or do I go to that emergency meeting that was called? So for me, this is a really exciting and great change that SAP have brought in.
Yeah, awesome.
And from, I guess, a career development point of view, that's about it, really. That's there were some other interesting topics that they brought out from a release point of view, but we don't have time to talk about all of them, unfortunately. But for me, they were the standout ones that I really wanted to highlight and talk to everyone today.
Yeah, awesome. I guess I just had one more I wanted to talk about. And we are nearing the end, guys. So if you've got any questions, please do put them in the chat. So the last one I wanted to mention, it's not specific to performance or succession or anything. It sits kind of in platform, but it is really important to the modules that we're talking about today. And that's around how we manage competencies. So there have been many ways that we've managed competencies through the years. So we had managed competencies, which was an old version. Then we moved into job profile builder, which was where you could build out your job descriptions and have a library of competencies. In this release, the libraries of competencies are moving into what's called the center of capabilities. And that's effectively a new framework that provides a centralized repository. And Job Profile Builder will still remain. It will still get its competencies from the center of capabilities, but they'll sit in their own section of SuccessFactors. And I guess the reason that they're moving that way is having the competencies or capabilities in a way that they can be leveraged more across the platform. And the initiative aims to shift the approach towards work as more people focus around, their job-based competencies as opposed to necessarily the task-based work that they're working on. So I feel that the move towards the center of capabilities is really around, having them in a place that they can then access more easily in the likes of Employee Central and things like that. So I think there's going to be a little bit more to come around this space. But the only important thing to notice at this point is that the center of capabilities will come out in this release. And so your competencies will move into that area of the system. But no change from any other perspective. It's just that you might want to find them in Admin Center somewhere. Yeah, I think that covers everything I felt was important and key highlights for this release. So we might just give it a hot second to see if we've got any questions coming through the chat. And if there are no questions at this point, please feel free at any point to continue to put them into the chat. We will respond. And if you've got any questions or you need any support, don't hesitate to reach out to us directly, and we can support you in any which way you need to. Michael, any final comments?
No, I think we've covered everything we needed to, and as I've said many times before, I'm excited to see what the future holds for these releases.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining, particularly our Rizing customers, and we hope you've enjoyed today's session. We hope to see you next time for the H2 release series, because the next one really is never far away. So thank you all.
Thank you.